were the joint practices with the Raiders a success for the 49ers? And my answer, even though the 49ers struggled, I would say it is a success, right? And, I sort of teeter on the fence about whether or not, was it, it's embarrassing the way they performed against the Raiders. No offense. No offense. I don't think anybody expected the Raiders to perform that well. But the reason why I say it's a success for the 49ers is because you want to have that wake-up call early, because the Niners have started slow. Like the past couple seasons, they've started like 3-4, 3-5. I think if they are serious about getting back to the Super Bowl and winning, they need to secure that 1 seed. You don't want to go back to Philadelphia. If you can avoid to play a playoff game, like an NFC championship game on the road, do it at all costs, because having that home field advantage is so huge. Look at 2019. They were able to, they played against the Packers in the playoffs, steamrolled them at home, and the Packers really couldn't do anything about it. It just, it wasn't an environment that they were ready to play in, yeah. And honestly, they didn't match up well against the Niners anyway. But, having a faster start, I think, is going to be a huge thing for this team. And having the wake-up call happen in training camp versus having it happen when you're, oh shit, we're 3-5 and might not make the playoffs, right?
Right.
I think that's a huge difference. And you're going against a team who might not make the playoffs, and you're struggling, right? I think it is a success in that regard, but I have a message for the Niner teams. You guys honestly should be ashamed of yourselves that you let the Raiders drive on you like that. You're supposed to be a top tier defense. I don't care if Nick Bosa's on the field. In 2020, you guys didn't have Nick Bosa, and you guys were still a top 5 defense in the league. I understand that you have a new defensive coordinator, but there's just too much talent on that defense to be letting a quarterback that you've seen for several years now play with less talent. No offense to the Raider receivers, but that is a less talented team than the 49ers have been for the past several years. And you just let them fucking, go by you. And I understand you're in a different environment, but I don't care. The good teams are supposed to smack the bad teams. And maybe the Raiders will be better than everybody anticipated this year. But, that's just on the defensive side of the ball. Where I'm also really disappointed is how many interceptions, not just Brock Purdy threw, but all the quarterbacks, right? I want to say that they combined for 6 interceptions today. And a lot of those came in 7-on-7 drills, right? And so
a little bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I see a couple comments. I will get to those in a second, but you are throwing balls in a 7-on-7 drill. You should not throw that many interceptions. I'm sorry. There's no lineman coming at you, right? There's no excuse to have pressure in your face. And when I said that the offensive pass rush, the defensive pass rush versus the offensive, pass blocker drill favors the defense. When it comes to skill positions, like 7-on-7 drills, and you go like 1-on-1s like this favors the offense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You only have 7 players on the field. You're not able to do what you're able to do to force defenses to go to, to force offenses to go to a particular side of the field or whatever. For the most part, it's guys, covering guys in man coverage, or maybe you might throw in some zone. But this is like, what do they call it? Elementary, right? This is like entry level stuff, right? I'm not here to say that there aren't supposed to be any interceptions, and maybe you're just trying something out. But it's just not a good look for a team that is looking to win the Super Bowl. And I'm not, it sounds like I'm overreacting to the picks, which I am complaining about them because it's coming against the Raiders. But I mean, just you have to be improving, right? You don't want to be making the same mistakes every day, because I'm a firm believer that you practice the way you play, right? And if you are going to be throwing a lot of interceptions in practice against another team, when you get in the game, you're also probably going to be throwing, interceptions if you aren't improving. And I want to say Brock Purdy threw 4 interceptions today.
I want 3 or 4.
It was either 3 or 4.
It was 3. I have it right here. It says 3 right here. It could have been 4, but I think it was just 3.
Okay. I also heard that there were several dropped interceptions.
Yeah.
And then Joel also said, from the 49er beat writers, what was the consensus of how scrimmages went? According to Raider beat writers, you guys dominated it.
Let me say something really quick. That right there is a great way to get back to the topic. That's a great way to get back to our topic. And it is a great way. Great question. And yes, like you said, thank you, Joel, for these comments. And yeah, we appreciate it.
So, I mean, the reporting on Niner beat writing can be sort of like split. Like you'll get half of guys that say that, Brock Purdy or the offense, had a really solid day. And then you'll have your more pessimistic or more brutally honest people say, you know what? The completion percentage was high, but this is how it looked. And I would say the way that the joint practices went and the way that the coverages were, it was a little mixed in terms of like the numbers. The numbers that came out, it was a little bit different because the Raiders had all of the riders like super far away, like at least 100 yards away from the action. So they had to look at a lot of stuff through their binoculars. But I heard, from the beat writers that the Niners struggled. Like it was not good. The defense was allowing the Raiders to just, go drive after drive on them. And the Niners offense, they threw a lot of interceptions. So, I mean, unless there's beat writers out there that think that interceptions are not, I mean, in practice, it's a little bit different because, like we've said before, you're trying things out versus in like an actual game, like you don't have the opportunity to throw certain passes because, you want to protect the football. But I guess the consensus of beat writers that I follow say that, the Niners struggled today versus the Raiders. And I would have to say that looking at the stats and the coverage that I got, I think that the Raiders kicked the Niners' ass today. And I was pissed.
Yeah. I had a few things I was going to say. Yeah, you mentioned, how far away reporters were from the practice field. And I think that's always kind of been a thing with the Raiders. And then 2 things I was going to say about just these practices overall. First off, like if we're talking preseason game coming up or the joint practices, I'm kind of, as far as the starters go and like getting hyped towards this team in the regular season, I look more towards joint practice than the preseason. I want to see, what does Davante Adams do? What does Duke Shelley do? What does Amik Robertson? What does Nate Hobbs? These starters, Robert Spillane. I did not expect Robert Spillane to get like 3 or 4 picks over the past 2 days. Wasn't expecting that at all. And he's a starting linebacker, so props to him. He might not play in the preseason game. So, point being, I love seeing joint practices because you get a real gauge on like, how are they doing against other teams, not just themselves,
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I wanted to say was I take a lot of the offense against the Niners first team defense with a grain of salt because Nick Bosa was not on the field. I think that's important. And you could say the same about Josh Jacobs not being there, but when it's time for the team to go out there and throw the ball, when Jimmy G is throwing the ball and the offensive linemen are blocking the defensive linemen, you don't have Bosa out there. That's a huge difference. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a huge difference in terms of typically you need at least 2 guys on Bosa practically every play.
Yeah.
Bosa is one of those players. It's incredibly tough to just get him one-on-one and not have to worry about him. Typically, what I've seen that has worked against Bosa is when you have like a running back chip him and then run to the flat, or you have a tight end chip him and then run the route.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've said it many times before. He's just absolutely relentless, but that is the most effective method to really get him.
Yeah.
But going back to the real question, so I would have to say the Raiders. I don't know if I would use the word dominated, but they did. I did say they kicked the Niners' ass, and in a way, they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody was expecting the Raiders to play as well as they did against the Niners.
Yeah, maybe nobody other than themselves.
Other than
I guess
Josh McDaniels and whoever's in that locker room.
Yeah.
And maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, because he's like, yeah, I'm going to fucking kick their ass. Fuck them.
I think, dominated might be strong, but I would say it was pretty clear that they won both days, which is, all things considered, very impressive, in my book.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, I mean, it really depends. It really depends, like, what you want to call a victory in a joint practice. Like, if you're talking numbers wise, yeah, the Raiders won.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about quality reps, that's different. That's up to the coaches to review the film and determine whether or not the guys got good looks. I think both teams walked away from this with something great. And both teams.
I mean, that was the other thing I was thinking was, what if the Niners were just kind of off their game because they weren't practicing in the usual place? I mean, that shouldn't matter because, you're not going to play at home all 16 weeks or 17 weeks, so, going out and practicing for 2 days in Vegas shouldn't throw you off. Plus, I heard the weather was actually beautiful and not like scorching hot for once.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think it's a big excuse, but I wonder if the Niners felt a little out of their element. Maybe the pace of the practice was different because maybe it was more of, I know, like, at first the Niners and the Raiders are kind of practicing separately, doing their usual like warm-up drills, and then they come together and they start doing stuff. Maybe it was a little off kilter for them relative to the Raiders,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because it's in the Raiders' house. Maybe it was kind of led by the Raiders. I don't know. As far as the timing of drills and stuff, I don't know. I'm curious if, like you said, if they were getting quality reps, what if the Niners were so off their game that the Raiders weren't getting quality reps, and then this is all just hype, and then they're going to come in with their thinking they got big swinging dicks, and week 1 they get scorched by the Broncos. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good for the Raiders to have that morale booster that, yeah, we went against the Niners, and they are a top defense in the NFL, and they just know how good they can be if they're on their game, right?
Yeah.
And they execute the plan that McDaniels has for them. Where I see this as a good thing for the 49ers is you got, and these are things that I've been worried about. You had an opportunity for Brock Purdy to be throwing against another defense because, I mean, people want to say that he's the franchise quarterback. I'm not so sold on him yet because he's only played like 7 or 8 games. But it's live reps against another team, which is super valuable in the NFL because, I mean, nowadays, you don't get a lot of time to really prepare for the season, not as much as you did back in the day. And to get something closer to game speed than a normal training camp is great. So you got Brock Purdy seeing another defense. You got Trey Lance seeing another defense. You got Sam Darnold seeing another defense. It was sort of like a measuring stick, and it turned into a wake up call because that's how it was, right? Another way that this is a good thing for the 49ers is that their defense got exploited, and you need to address that early. They still have a month before the season starts, and they can review the film and see where things went wrong and improve that. And obviously things will improve once Bosa gets back on the field. But you have to really see, like, all right, what is it that Jimmy Garoppolo and the Raiders and Brian Hoyer in the Raiders and Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders were able to do in terms of being able to drive down the field on us, right? Because there's no way that this Niner defense isn't going to create a lot of turnovers this season. There's too much talent. And I think this is great for Steve Wilks to get accustomed to these guys going up against somebody else, right? Because if you go up against, like I've been a football player before, playing against another team is so much different than playing against the same guys every day, because you get a lot of the same looks every single day. You know which guys on the field are better than you. You know which guys on the field that you're going to dominate. And then the guys know a lot of the plays that you're running. And once you go against like another team that isn't running the exact same stuff over and over again, it's valuable, right? I've done joint practices before when I played football. It was great. We played against Irvington High School, right? It was a great experience to see how another team does it. And you're not really team, but you're sharing that experience with them. And so getting back to where this is good, the 49ers offensive line, who I have a lot of question marks about the right side, they got reps against the Raiders defense. And honestly, this is more of a good thing for Kyle Shanahan than I'd say. It is a good thing for Colton McKivitz, but Kyle Shanahan has really got to evaluate whether McKivitz can step up into that starting role. And Chandler Jones is a great, he was a better pass rusher in years prior than he was this past season. But Chandler Jones has, been a solid pass rusher for most of his career.
I'd still say he's probably a top 15 pass rusher in the league right now.
Yeah, I would probably say so. I would have to see 15 names for me to disagree with that, right?
I'd also have to see how he does this year. If he doesn't do it, if he does the same thing as last season, then it's off. Like, yeah.
But yeah, just sort of evaluating players a little bit differently. I think that's super, it was successful in that regard, but they really I feel like they needed this wake up call because they're not as great as they think they are. Right. And the only way that you're going to find that out is if somebody else kicks your ass.